for school testing and school test and assessments. This bill would clarify the parents' rights to direct the school not to administer assessment tests to their children. The bill has different sections for different kinds of tests, including for state content achievement in reading and mathematics, interim assessment, career interest inventory, work keys, and ACT. Prior to the test, the purpose of the assessment would have to make available to the parents the reasoning for the test and the right to opt out, which would have to be available and posted on the school website. This bill would also require that during the testing periods that parents would have to withhold or could withhold their children from school during that time, and the child would not be considered absent. Your Education Committee heard testimony from parents that believe they have this right to opt out of the test now, but many school districts are not sure how to handle this. Some have resisted the request, some have complied, and many are not sure how to handle this. Your Senate Education Committee agree that parents do have the right to opt out of some test, and that right should be honored, but should be done in an orderly and consistent manner. We also believe that the procedure needs to be clear, easy to understand, and offer protections to the students, parents, and the school district. The amendment we have before us tries to do that. This is a Hog House amendment. Section 1, subsection 1 allows for parents to opt out of any test that does not apply to anything that requires a grade, anything that is required for graduations, like our new civics test, the ACT test, or the work keys test. The ACT test and the work keys assessments are required for our scholarship programs, and they have been our primary gauge on how our students are doing. We have always been proud to say that we test all of our students in this state, and not all states can say that. Even with this, we still achieve very well. Section 2 provides a standardized form prepared by the Superintendent of Public Instruction that is signed by the custodial parent and is good for the current school year. This form would be retained as a permanent student educational record. This form should be clear on what the student is opting out of, and that there may be consequences for opting out of, which may include loss of scholarship opportunities and fundings for special need programs such as Title I. Section 3 makes it clear that school districts is not liable for any consequences incurred by a student as a result of the parents submitted in accordance with this section. Section 4 must make this information and forms available to the parents and posted on the website. Mr. President, that's the amendments for 1283.
Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Senator Larson.
Well, Mr. President, I would hope that we can reject these amendments. Currently, parents can opt their students out of all of these tests. And now with this amendment, it's saying that parents no longer have the right to opt out of the work keys or the ACT. As I was an instructor, I had many students that did not use the ACT test for the scholarship. No matter how hard they tried, they did not get the 26 point or the 24 points, the cutoff to get it. So they're getting 18s and 16s and whatever that might be. So if that student went to another college campus while they were a junior or senior and took a FAST course of 8 weeks or 16 weeks, they could get a college transcript and a class that they were already a college student, and then they could transfer when they were going to college to take auto or diesel mechanics. They could transfer as a student from a different college because they already took a college class. And so they didn't need to get that 24 or 26 on the ACT, and they could take the ACT at the time that they wanted to. If that 16, I believe at our two-year universities, the 16 is what they need, and they might not even take ACT for admission if they were a transferring student. So we're taking the rights of parents and people now to have to take those tests unless it's for graduation. We just did the test or the curriculum for a civics test for graduation. So they can soon say, we're going to have the Smarter Skilled Balanced test for graduation. they can put on any test they want for graduation as time goes on. And we should be able to continue to have that opportunity to opt out of these tests. So I would encourage us to not adopt these amendments. And also on the foreign part of it as well. So thank you.
Senator Miller.
Mr. President, I would have to concur with my colleague to my left's assumption on these amendments. I think they go a little bit too far beyond where we are currently with parental rights and what tests their children can take and what they perhaps would not want to take. And I would ask the Senate to reject the amendments and so pass the bill as it currently came over from the House. I think that's a power and that's a right that parents need to hold, and I think we should just leave that in their hands and pass the bill as it came over from the House.
Senator Flacco.
Mr. President, I think these are fine amendments. It still gives the parents a lot of latitude to do what they think is in the best interest of their child. It provides really a good framework in terms of how best to go about that. These amendments, as opposed to currently, requires that they be kept as part of their permanent record. It also, right now, also requires that those be in writing. Current law does not require that. The rest of the bill is silent on that. We don't want to have parents calling up to the district and saying, I would like my child to opt out, and then that is not part of their permanent record. They have no resources to show that that has actually occurred. I think it was the proper thing because we know, unfortunately, that there are many situations where there's a parent, not a non-custodial parent, they're divorced parents, and this gives the power to the custodial parent to be more clear on that. So if they disagree on that, that's an important notice. And it also defines, because we heard in testimony from both sides, that there's a lot of ambiguity in far as, well, is it for one test or all the tests? What we've asked through the legislation is to have them provide a buffet of choices so that it's not just all or none. They can participate in some parents like what's called the MAP test as an example, that gives them teaching tools to say, I've been teaching this part for a while, let's see how they're doing on this. And that gives those teachers valuable. And sometimes the parents would really like to have that, but if it's all or none, then they can't. So this would help provide for that. Again, the amendments before you continue our tradition, or what we did with the requiring civics testing for graduation. And so this would go counter to that. Now they could all opt out of that requirement. And the other thing that we talked about in committee is with special education, we want to make sure that parents are aware that if they do opt out, which is their right, that it may not be able to as easily identify if their child needs those special services. And we want to make sure that they are working in conjunction with the school district as they pick from those buffet of choices. As far as the ACT tests go, Mr. President, and that's important for a couple of reasons. One, we're poised to spend nearly $2 billion this year.
When it comes to midsize SUVs, the all-new...
That is a great way to know if we're getting value for that money. Those tests are considered the gold standard for learning achievement in specific areas. And as was stated earlier, there are also those tests that are required. The thing that's important to remember is there's a number of students that we hear about, whether it's through their parents or through the students who went on to college. They go, we didn't think that Billy or Sally was going to be able to be qualified for that scholarship. And we find many what we'll call surprises that when they do take that test that normally probably wouldn't have, that they achieved very well. And now they're eligible for a scholarship. And that's been one of the other things that's been very transformational. We've been able to identify that in the past, in the 3-year reporting period, we've increased our ACT test scores by 14% in those high achievers. And right now we rank second nationally in terms of those states that require all their children to take the ACT test score. And I think that's important when we're talking about promoting the quality of education in North Dakota. Because if we're comparing them to only those students who take just the high end, we're not really getting relevant data. That's a part of that. So as the carrier of the amendment said, we've provided with these amendments an orderly, clear, and offer the protections for families and the district with that, and I ask for your support of the amendments to House Bill 1283.
Senator Larson.
Yeah, Mr. President, just to reiterate, we can currently opt out of these tests, and they're telling us now that you cannot opt out of tests. And I would like a verification vote.
Verification vote will be taken. Senator Klein.
Well, Mr. President, I'm going to go a little different direction here because I think we've always been proud of the procedures we do here, the transparency we have in our committees, and the things we do to make sure that the public is aware. This is a Hog House amendment, and as we're well aware of that, oftentimes Hog House amendments are not the bill that the folks out there came to listen to that believed that this is the bill that they were supporting. This happens to be one of those contentious issues that certainly in my district, people are certainly very concerned about. They worked really hard in the House to get the bill passed that they thought was the best deal they could get. But once again, I heard one of the previous speakers talk about parents' awareness. Well, these parents weren't aware of this until yesterday at one point, and certainly has lit up my screen a bit, my phone. So I have concerns with that. So I believe, Mr. President, at this point, I'm going to support a no vote on the amendments. I just believe that the folks of North Dakota need more of an opportunity to take a look at this and make that decision and help me with that.
Senator Shively.
Mr. President, just a little background on some of the testimony we heard and that stuff. A lot of what we heard was the Smarter Balance or the Common Core Assessment Test, and we totally agree with that, and all these other things too. We agree with parental rights and think that's is, but as the bill came to us in its original form, there is some issues with that. You know, and the thing is this is what we try to do. We try to pull out what was important, what we think that schools should be required to test on, leave the rest as an option for the parents, give them the right. We also agree that, you know, this needs to be protections for the schools and for the parents. Now, when you come in and opt out of just one thing and you need to understand what it is, I mean, we can't just have them coming in and with a phone call, an email, or a napkin saying, we'd like to opt out of this test. You need something a little more substantial with that. So we thought it would be, you know, to make this convenient for everybody is one standard form. We do not want to have schools or kids or parents later saying, we didn't know this was going to happen or we didn't understand what this was. So we think that needs to be clear on your form. I mean, that the idea is this not to take the rights away, not to infringe on what somebody can do. This is to clarify and give the protections to all sides that are involved. I think that's important because what we have with that other side, with the bill in its current form, you're going to miss some of those opportunities. I mean, the right to opt out is there, obviously, and quite frankly, the right is probably there as it stands right now. But the thing is what we have right now is creating confusions. It's creating confusions for almost everybody involved and the decisions how to do that. So we're not trying to take that right away, but we are trying to clear up that confusion. And I think this does that. I mean, you can, you know, in my opinion, the only thing this takes away from what the bill had before was the ACT and work keys. And I think the Education Committee just thought that was a vital part of our assessments and what we were trying to do to keep that important. I mean, now, you know, is that infringing on their rights? I don't know, but it's an important pack for school, and there's a lot of parts of school that I went to that I did not want to take, and I would have liked to opt out of, but it was not my choice, and I think it was important that I do some of them. As far as the curriculum being changed, that we will make it, you know, make it mandatory to take the Smarter Balance and pass the Smarter Balance to be a requirement. You know, yeah, I mean, that's a theory, but quite frankly, you know, we're trying to work in this system. We're trying to make our school systems better. We're trying to make our assessments better. And we're also trying to protect the rights of our parents and our kids. And I think that's what this was trying to do, was be to compromise some of that stuff. And I think it's better for what we had. I mean, the only thing you might disagree with the ACT portion of that, but everything else is the same or better. So,
Senator Davis.
Mr. President, I'll be brief. The previous speaker did an excellent job. This bill does two things, and unfortunately, I've been involved in this for the last 3 or 4 years. The first thing it does is it communicates. It provides a framework for communication among parents, among principals, and among superintendents about how this process happens. It's just such a critical component, I cannot tell you. The second thing it does, and it was the core of the argument since day one, and it's expanded way past the core argument, was the federal overreach in putting $500 to $600 million into developing the Smarter Balance and the PRAC state assessment test. That is the core argument from the people that send out these emails. This bill, this amendment, still allows them to opt out of that test. That was their core thing that they wanted, and this amendment still allows for that.
Senator Flacco.
Mr. President, I missed some of what was said earlier. I was reading a 5-page floor amendment. But I would ask for a recorded roll call vote.
Are there 7 senators willing to stand in support of the recorded roll call vote? Sufficient number having arisen, we will proceed by recorded roll call vote. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, the Secretary open the key. Every member record their vote. The question is on the amendment. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Secretary, close the key and take the tally. Tally reveals 32 senators voting yea, 13 voting nay. The amendment is adopted. House Bill 1283 will be moved to the 14th order. Senate will be on the 14th order and have before its first bill, House Bill 1195.